Hello, I'm Hamish Bowles, and we're at Buckingham Palace, and I'm here to tell you my objects of affection drawn from Queen Elizabeth II's treasury of clothing. Well, these 3 dresses by Smith & Co. They're made from Liberty fabric, of course.
It was quite a look that the young princesses obviously wore as children, these simple cotton dresses.
Yes. I am completely captivated by their bloomers, their longer puffed knickers.
The bloomers are very practical because it just gives them some modesty, I suppose.
Yes.
Particularly, in childhood, playing with the corgis and the dorgies and just having a kind of carefree childhood as was possible for the 2 young princesses.
Yes. Here we have dresses for Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, and astonishingly they were crafted and sent from Paris by Lanvin.
Jean Lanvin being the first couturier to design clothing for children, so far as I'm aware.
I also think this is fascinating. It was lengthened because she obviously must have liked it.
Yes, I think that's such a lovely part of the history of the piece, and it has a charm, and I wanted to introduce the idea of Parisian couture, even though really from here on in everything is British.
This was worn in South Africa. There are 4 of these velvet dresses. I think it's fascinating that you have this, which is 1947, and these, which are just a little bit later.
I was so happy to make this sort of contrast, as
Yes,
you say,
exactly.
because we see everything about that sort of mid, almost to late 40s shape, this much slimmer silhouette, and then suddenly everything changes.
Yes.
And the details on these are so exquisite. I like the fact that each one has just a very slightly different fastening, but everything is so carefully thought out. And the colours, I think, are also quite important because at this time, Hartnell says that Princess Elizabeth made it clear that she wished to wear stronger, darker colours.
Oh, really?
That's why I feel this moment is about the princess sort of establishing her own style.
Yes. We're looking at Princess Elizabeth's wedding dress, which is from 1947, and it was a creation by Norman Hartnell. It was greeted with a rapture, I suppose, by the public, because one had just come out of the war and everything was rationed and no one really had a dress like this. So it was magical.
I think it still has this sort of breathtaking quality.
Yes. You should get the shoes. I think that's just so divine.
At the time of her father's accession, she became heir presumptive. That was such a moment in history in this country. There was this, fascination for the young princess.
Her father was clearly unwell while she was at the beginning of what was to be a global tour, and she was in Kenya, I think.
That's right.
She discovered that he'd died.
And then we arrive at the moment of her coronation.
It is just incredible. It takes your breath away.
It sparkles.
Norman Hartnell created, with her involvement, this spectacular coronation dress. Didn't Hartnell have the symbols of Wales, Scotland and England and Ireland?
The addition of these details was to represent the dominions of which, of course, she was then queen.
Yes.
Executed in these beautiful colours, which give this lively freshness to these sort of almost like cornucopias of embroidery, which, say so much. So here we're looking at William Dargie's amazing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, painted right at the beginning of her reign. This is one painted specially for her and presented to her in 1957. And this became the official portrait of the Queen in Australia. And the reason it's important in the context of her wardrobe is because she's wearing her famous wattle dress, wattle being the national emblem of Australia. And there's little sparkles and the flower-shaped sequins and little pearls. It just, you can imagine it sort of really capturing the light and reflecting the sort of twinkle all around.
Exactly. She always wanted her designers to incorporate something for the host nation, and this is a remarkable example of that. Well, this was Princess Margaret's wedding in 1960.
It's quite a statement, isn't it? And it's just this very interesting turning point, 1960, and sort of counterculture.
And the last royal wedding for which women had to wear long dresses.
That's right.
Which is kind of a crazy mixture, because you have these afternoon hats and then this.
I mean, it's like going into the 18th century almost with the gloves. I just so wanted to put it all together, and by having the sketch, it gives this wonderful kind of atmosphere, and to see that translated from the page into the actual piece, it's quite rare to be able to do that. And I think that very distinctive silhouette and the fact that Hartnell managed not to include any embellishment was so there's something reflecting back, but it's a moment where things change.
This was the beginning of the 60s, obviously. Her Majesty was carrying more than a trace of the 50s with her.
We have one by Hardy Amies, showing his absolute fascination and love of tailoring, and then this almost crinoline skirted gown by Norman Hartnell from the 1961 tour wardrobe to India, Pakistan and Nepal. Something about the fabric, I think, could indicate that perhaps this was really thought through as a textile that would resonate with Indian culture. I mean, I'm sure it's not an actual Indian textile. It's almost certainly French, I would have thought. But it has this sort of volume as well, which is kind of Balenciaga.
Yes, this is Hardy Amies.
Yes.
Who was a bit more subdued than Hartnell, and he was looking at Balenciaga and Givenchy.
So this is off-duty style, very distinctive. This combination of tweed and tartan, the skirt made by Kinloch Anderson, the tartan makers in Scotland, and the jacket by Driscoll, who was the tailor at Hartnell in the 40s and up to the early 50s, yes. Then set up independently, and the Queen continued to go to him. But I think these show the way, even off duty, there's a kind of formality to the clothing. But there's something perhaps about it that, especially when we look at the portraits, the clothing gives that sense of confidence.
It was also remarkably close to what she wore as a girl, kilts and the formal jackets.
Exactly. You see that same trait going through so much part of her life.
This is great, this dress, this ensemble.
I love it, actually.
Yeah.
In fact, the wardrobe that Angela Kelly created for the Diamond Jubilee, I think was so sort of coherent and well thought through. The Queen looked absolutely radiant. It was such an important moment. And this piece, of course, worn for the river pageant, where the weather wasn't as kind as it might have been. Nonetheless, it's survived unscathed, and there's a regal quality, but it's also a little bit sort of relaxed somehow. I don't know. There's just something very comforting about looking at it.
Well, these are remarkable tiaras that were made for Her Majesty. This was featuring aquamarines that came from Brazil. It's quite something. And this was from Burma in 1947.
The rubies have this incredible colour, much more vivid than I had imagined, as I've actually never seen. I mean, this is the first time it's been exhibited. So,
really?
Yes. So it's just wonderful to see it. It's quite a spectacular jewel.
Well, a crown is a symbol of a coronation. That's only worn by the monarch.
In a way, I suppose, because we know that these were made with these wonderful gifts of stones commissioned by the Queen, that they have that sort of regal status. But of course, in reality, anybody can wear a tiara. The fact that they incorporate these state gifts.
Yes.
Gives them, I suppose, that kind of dignity and association
Yes.
with monarchy. But as you say, the crown can only be worn by the sovereign. This archive has shown, I think, particularly being able to access all the documentation, correspondence, fashion sketches, seeing the hand of the Queen literally presents a much more rounded story about her relationship with fashion. The great takeaway, I suppose, is that she was deeply, deeply involved in the production of her clothing.
Just walking through these rooms, you have a real sense of who she was and the messages and images that she wanted to convey through the way she dressed.
That sense of communication, I think, with audiences was so important for her.
Yes, exactly.
Even without needing to speak. The clothes did so much of the talking, really.
They did. I'm thrilled that we've taken this trip through history together with these amazing clothes, and I'll see you soon.